Hello, I'm Mario Toneguzzi, and I'm taking care of business. Joining me today is Paula Allen, who is Global Leader and Senior Vice President of Research and Wellbeing with LifeWorks. Thanks for joining us today, Paula.
Pleasure.
Well, let's talk about the mental health index that LifeWorks has just released. A negative score for the 21st consecutive month. First of all, is that surprising to you that we're still in that, I guess, negative mindset these days?
Unfortunately, no. It's feeling a little bit different. Like we're no longer in shock, like we were at the beginning of the pandemic. But our lives continue to be disrupted, and the risk and uncertainty continues. And as we mentioned even before, just the length of time that risk and uncertainty and disruption has been going on weighs heavily on people. You know, you get into a very different mindset, just generally speaking. So unfortunately, it's not a surprise, but hopefully our past and our current isn't going to be necessitating what our future is going to be. We do still have some control.
What do you think is going to be needed to turn that around?
Actually, a lot. We have to be very intentional about our mental health and well-being as individuals, but it's not just an individual thing. You know, people can take stock of their thinking. They can do things to sort of get more control back in their lives. They can reach out for help. All of these things are very important, but mental health is a collective responsibility. You know, how we're treating each other makes a big difference. Your social environment and your contact and your trust in other people. And unfortunately, what's happened as well is that many of us have gotten used to smaller worlds. So, you know, even when we're able to, we're not having as much contact with other people as we otherwise would. And that's a part of this change.
Yeah. I wanted to look at some of the key findings from the latest index and survey. 38% of Canadians feel that, I guess, that flexibility at work is important, and they want it. Why is that?
Well, I mentioned for control, and then flexibility actually gives you a bit more control over your life. I mean, we've had in this pandemic a lot of control taken away from us for very good reason, but that is the reality. We haven't been able to do exactly the same things that we wanted to do in the same ways that we wanted to do them. And, you know, one area where people were feeling a little bit more control is once things settle down, if you were working from home, for example, you didn't feel that because you were in your environment, many of us felt that we did have a little bit more control over our time. So people are not wanting to give away that control. You know, that ability to sort of integrate your personal life into your work life. You're still very accountable, but how and when and those little minutes where you spend them is more within your own choice. That is what we're hearing loud and clear is important.
Well, yeah, the other thing too is the fact that 29% felt the most important type of flexibility is being able to get away and to deal with personal issues, right? And whatever happened, a kid is at school and he's sick, you can drop things of what you're doing and go. Why is that becoming increasingly more important for people?
I think it's always been important, but people in many work situations, people didn't really have a taste of what that felt like.
Yeah.
And over the last little while, we have. I mean, and kudos to employers that, you know, when we were in this kind of disruption, people really were very empathetic about needing to take care of your child who was homeschooling at the same time you were doing work, at the same time your dog needed to be walked, and all the rest of those things. And really recognize that it's important for people to be able to blend life and work.
Yeah.
And what employees are saying is, regardless of what happens, if I go back to the office in a hybrid situation, if I continue to work from home, if I'm in a workplace full time, I really do want to still have that flexibility. I'll still get my job done, but I don't want to feel boxed in the hours that I am working if something comes up and that's a necessity.
So when it comes to overall for flexibility of the work environment, how do you, I guess, what are your thoughts on where employers are these days on that? I know there's probably some industries that are not unable to do it because of the nature of their industry, but in a general sense, in an office environment, do you think more and more employers are today more willing to adapt and to give flexible options to people?
I think we're definitely getting there, and I think a lot of that is that there was a lot of flexibility that was needed in order to make sure that work did get done during the height of the initial lockdowns. It just wasn't possible to work if there wasn't that flexibility, and work did get done. And I do think a lot of employers had in their minds, like many of us did, that at some point things would go back to exactly the way it was, and everybody would be happy for that. But I think at this point they're realizing that that a lot has changed. We've seen this discussion around hybrid work, which is one aspect of it, but there's many aspects. It's really about a bit of a change in the employee-employer relationship, and one that's probably built a little bit more on trust, because that's what allows you to offer flexibility. So I think this is going to emerge as a more common part of the culture of many organizations over time.
All right, super. And the last question I have for you, one of the interesting stats from the survey was 50% of those surveyed believe their CEO cares about their well-being. I actually I found that kind of interesting, that number. I didn't think it would be that high, right? Because I think a lot of people in a work environment, especially as companies are bigger, kind of think they're little peons just doing the work that needs to be done for people, and nobody really cares about them. Are you surprised at that number, or is that a good number?
Is the glass half full or is it half empty?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I think what's happened over the last, I know what's happened over the last little while is that a lot of CEOs have been much more visible and showing their concern
Yeah.
around the well-being of employees. I was actually speaking to one, and he said that he was taken aback because he said he heard from an employee that before the pandemic, he actually didn't even know who the CEO was. So he's glad to know the name and glad to hear the voice. But I think that is really something that we need to give a lot of credit to. CEOs recognizing that this has been difficult for employees and showing the empathy and making sure that there was an understanding that the organization wanted to work with people to support their mental health. Having said that, I actually believe that there's probably more CEOs who really do genuinely care about the well-being of their employees than this 50% would recognize. So I think there's probably still a little bit of work in terms of just making that intention, that feeling more visible. So our numbers are much higher than 50%. Because it makes a difference, when people feel that the top of the house really does care about their well-being, then it does make a difference in how you feel about the organization overall.
All right, super. Thanks, Paula, for joining us again today.
A pleasure, Mario.
All right, that was Paula Allen, Global Leader and Senior Vice President of Research and Wellbeing for LifeWorks. I'm Mario Toneguzzi, and this has been Taking Care of Business. Thanks for joining us today.